The Diplomat's Gambit captain Vivian Blackthorne adjusted her emerald silk gown one final time before stepping onto the bridge of the UES Nightfall. The crew tried not to stare, but their eyes inevitably drifted to their commanding officer, resplendent in flowing fabric that seemed absurdly out of place among the gunmetal gray of warship corridors. "Status report, Lieutenant Graves," Vivian commanded, her voice carrying the same authority whether she wore battle armor or evening wear. "The Krelian Armada has surrounded Titan Station, ma'am," reported the young officer, his weathered face grim. 300 vessels, including their flagship Devastator. They're demanding complete surrender within the hour." Vivian's lips curved into a predatory smile. Perfect timing for a diplomatic reception. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew the reputation of Warlord Zefak the Merciless, leader of the Krelian hegemony. He had never negotiated, never shown mercy, and certainly never attended human social functions. His species viewed diplomacy as weakness, preferring to communicate through superior firepower. "Ma'am, with respect," interjected Commander Torres, the ship's tactical officer, "our fleet won't arrive for another 6 hours. We're outnumbered 50-1. "Precisely why we're not fighting," Vivian replied, smoothing her silk skirts. "We're hosting a party," she turned to Communications Officer Martinez. "Open a channel to the Krelian flagship, full-spectrum broadcast." The view screen flickered to life, revealing Warlord Zefak himself, 8 feet of scaled muscle and razor-sharp teeth, his 4 arms crossed in obvious disdain. Behind him, the bridge of the Devastator pulsed with ominous red lighting. "Human vessel," Zefak growled, his translator rendering his words in mechanical tones. "You will surrender immediately, or face annihilation." Vivian stepped forward, her silk gown catching the bridge lights like liquid starfire. "Warlord Zefak, how delightfully punctual. I was just about to invite you aboard for dinner. I do hope you haven't eaten recently." The alien warlord's 4 eyes narrowed. "You mock me, human." "Quite the contrary," Vivian purred. "I'm offering you something no warrior has ever possessed. The chance to defeat humanity's most dangerous weapon without firing a single shot." Zefak leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "Explain." "Our diplomatic corps," Vivian said with theatrical gravity. "We've conquered more worlds with words than your entire armada has with weapons. Surely the great Zefak isn't afraid of one human female in a pretty dress." The warlord's mandibles clicked, the Krelian equivalent of laughter. "You dare challenge my courage? Very well, diplomat. I will come aboard your vessel and watch you fail. Then I will destroy your station and everyone on it." "Wonderful," Vivian beamed. "Formal attire required, of course. I'll have my chef prepare something special." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Captain," Torres whispered, "what are you planning?" Vivian's smile turned sharp as her silk rustled. "To win a war over dinner, Commander. Alert the galley. We're serving justice tonight." The Feast of Deception. The UES Nightfall's main dining hall had been transformed into something resembling a 5-star restaurant rather than a military vessel's mess. Crystal chandeliers cast, warm light over mahogany tables draped in white linen, while soft classical music played from hidden speakers. Vivienne stood at the room's center, her silk gown flowing around her like liquid shadow, checking final arrangements. "Captain Moreau reports the Krelian shuttle has docked," announced Ensign Winters from the doorway. "Warlord Zefak is aboard, with a full honor guard." "Excellent," Vivian murmured, adjusting a flower arrangement. "Remember, everyone, we're gracious hosts tonight. No matter what happens, maintain perfect etiquette." The dining hall doors slid open with a hiss, and Warlord Zefak strode in, his massive frame filling the doorway. He wore ceremonial battle armor crafted from the bones of his enemies, a stark contrast to the elegant surroundings. Behind him, 6 Krelian warriors in full combat gear swept the room with predatory gazes. "Welcome aboard the Nightfall," Vivienne said, gliding forward with a diplomat's smile. "I trust your journey was pleasant?" Zephak's 4 eyes studied her with undisguised contempt. "Your vessel reeks of weakness, human. Pretty fabrics and soft lighting. No wonder your species falls so easily." "How observant," Vivienne replied, gesturing to the main table. "Please be seated. I've arranged a traditional human feast in your honor." The warlord approached the table suspiciously, his guards flanking him. Each place setting featured multiple forks, knives, and glasses, a bewildering array of human dining implements. "What is this complexity?" "Merely proper etiquette," Vivienne explained, taking her seat across from him. "Each course requires specific utensils. It's really quite simple once you understand the pattern." As if summoned by her words, servers emerged carrying the first course, a delicate soup garnished with herbs. Zephak stared at the small spoon beside his bowl, then at Vivienne as she demonstrated the proper technique. "In Krelian culture," Zephak growled, lifting the bowl to drink directly, "strength is measured by how quickly one devours one's enemies." "How fascinating," Vivienne mused, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "Tell me, warlord, how many worlds have you conquered this cycle?" 47, Zephak boasted, his chest swelling with pride. Their defenders were pathetic. No honor in their defeats. The servers returned with the second course, an intricate arrangement of vegetables and proteins that required careful navigation with fork and knife. Vivienne watched as Zephak struggled with the implements, his massive claws poorly suited. "For delicate manipulation, remarkable efficiency," she commented. "Though I must ask, do you personally lead every assault?" "Of course," Zephak snarled, fumbling with his knife. "A true warrior fights from the front, not cowering behind subordinates like human commanders." "How admirably direct," Vivienne said, cutting her food with practiced precision. "Though surely some battles require more nuanced approaches." As the evening progressed through 7 elaborate courses, Vivienne maintained a stream of seemingly innocent questions. Where were his fleets positioned? How did he coordinate attacks across multiple systems? What were his species' greatest military traditions? Zephak, frustrated by the complex dining rituals and perhaps influenced by the human alcohol he'd been consuming, answered each query with boastful detail. His guards, equally uncomfortable with human customs, remained focused on potential threats, rather than their commander's loose tongue. "This is ridiculous!" Zephak finally roared, sweeping his arm across the table and scattering dishes. "Enough games, human! Your station surrenders or dies!" Vivienne remained perfectly composed, her silk unstained despite the chaos. "Of course, warlord, but surely you'll stay for dessert? I'd hate for you to leave hungry." The art of war. The tension in the dining hall crackled like electricity as Warlord Zephak towered over the debris of scattered dishes, his 4 arms spread wide in aggressive display. His bone armor gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, a stark reminder of his deadly reputation. Yet Vivienne remained seated, her silk gown pristine, calmly dabbing wine from her fingers with a cloth napkin. "Your patience honors me, warlord," she said with unshakable composure. "But before we discuss Titan Station's fate, I'm curious about something." Zephak's mandibles clicked irritably. "Speak quickly, human." "Your conquest of the Valdorian system last month," Vivienne continued, her tone conversational. "Brilliant strategy, really. Using their own defensive satellites against them by hacking their command frequencies. Though I wonder, how did you manage to crack their encryption so quickly?" The warlord's eyes narrowed. "How do you know of Valdoria?" "Intelligence networks," Vivienne replied with a dismissive wave. "We humans do love our information gathering. The way you positioned your dreadnoughts in the asteroid field while your stealth ships flanked from the gas giant's shadow, textbook asymmetric warfare. Despite himself, Zefek preened slightly. The Valdorians thought themselves clever with their impenetrable defenses. Fools failed to consider attacks from multiple dimensional vectors. Ah, yes, your dimensional displacement technology. Vivian nodded approvingly. Fascinating application of quantum mechanics, though I imagine the power requirements must be enormous. 3 fusion cores per ship, Zefak confirmed automatically, then caught himself. Why do you seek this knowledge? Vivian smiled mysteriously. Professional curiosity. Your reputation precedes you, after all. She gestured to her aide, Lieutenant Commander Brooks, who approached, carrying a crystalline decanter. Perhaps you'd join me in a toast to your victories? The amber liquid within caught the light like liquid gold. Zefak accepted the glass, studying its contents suspiciously. What is this? Terran brandy, aged 50 years in oak barrels, Vivian explained, raising her own glass. To honor fallen warriors, both yours and mine. The Krelian tradition of honoring dead enemies was sacred. Zefek could not refuse without losing face before his guards. He drained the glass in one gulp, then slammed it down with authority. Now, he growled, we discuss terms. Your station will... Forgive the interruption, came a new voice from the dining hall entrance. Captain Felix Reeves of the UES Stormbreaker strode in, his uniform immaculate, followed by 3 junior officers. Captain Blackthorn, our sensor array has detected some interesting anomalies. Vivian's expression didn't change, but Zefak noticed the subtle communication between the humans. What anomalies? Oh, nothing concerning, Reeves replied casually. Just some unusual energy signatures near your flagship, probably routine maintenance on your dimensional drives. Zefak's 4 eyes widened slightly. The brandy had been stronger than expected, and the elaborate dinner had left him slightly disoriented. My ships are operating normally. Of course, Vivian agreed smoothly. Though I must admit, Captain Reeves has a point. Your dimensional displacement technology does create distinctive quantum resonance patterns, rather like fingerprints, wouldn't you say? Quantum resonance is classified military intelligence, Zefak snarled, realizing too late that he'd been maneuvered into revealing technical details. Indeed, Vivian stood gracefully, her silk rustling like whispered secrets. Just as your fleet positioning, command frequencies, and tactical doctrine are classified. Yet here we are, discussing them over dinner like old friends. The warlord's guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons, but Zefak raised one massive arm to stop them. His warrior's instincts were finally overriding the effects of alcohol and manipulation. You, he began slowly, pieces falling into place. Played you like a violin, Vivian finished pleasantly. Though I must say, you make a delightfully talkative dinner companion. My intelligence officers will be quite pleased with tonight's recording. Zefak roared in fury, but before he could act, alarms began wailing throughout the ship. Red lights bathed the dining hall as emergency klaxons echoed through the corridors. What is the meaning of this? Zefak demanded. Vivian checked her, chronometer with theatrical precision. Right on schedule. I believe that would be the human fleet dropping out of hyperspace. All 57 ships, positioned exactly where you told me your forces would be weakest. The warlord's face went ashen beneath his scales as the full scope of his manipulation became clear. The price of pride. The bridge of the UES Nightfall hummed with controlled chaos as battle stations came online. Vivian swept onto the command deck, her silk gown flowing behind her like a war banner, while Warlord Zefak and his guards were escorted under heavy security. The main view screen displayed a tactical overview that made the Krelian warlord's blood run cold. Report, Vivian commanded, settling into her captain's chair with fluid grace. Admiral Hawthorne's task force has emerged from hyperspace exactly as planned, announced Lieutenant Commander Chen from the tactical station. 57 vessels in attack formation, targeting the coordinates you provided. On the screen, streams of brilliant plasma fire erupted across space as human ships engaged the Krelian armada. But this wasn't the desperate last stand Zefak had expected. It was surgical precision. Human vessels struck at specific points in the enemy formation, exploiting weaknesses the warlord had unknowingly revealed during dinner conversation. Impossible, Zefak breathed, watching his flagship Devastator take concentrated fire from 3 human cruisers positioned exactly where his defenses were thinnest. My intelligence networks showed only 15 human ships in this sector. Oh, we had 15 ships here, Vivian confirmed pleasantly. The other 42 were hiding in the nebula, using the same dimensional displacement principles you so kindly explained. Your own technology turned against you. The warlord's 4 eyes blazed with fury. You dare use Krelian innovations against us? Actually, they're not yours, interrupted Dr. Nathaniel Cross, the Nightfall's chief science officer, approaching with a datapad. Dimensional displacement was developed by the Ethereal Collective 3 centuries ago. The Krelians simply appropriated it after conquering their homeworld. Vivian nodded approvingly. We humans have an expression, what goes around, comes around. Though in this case it's more like, what gets stolen, gets restolen. The tactical display showed Krelian ships beginning to break formation as human forces pressed their advantage. Communications chatter filled the bridge as enemy commanders tried desperately to coordinate a response, but their plans had been compromised before the battle even began. Your fleet is finished, Vivian observed, watching a Krelian destroyer explode in brilliant flames. Your tactical doctrine is known, your technology understood, your command structure mapped, all thanks to your generous sharing over dinner. Zefak strained against his restraints, his bone armor rattling. This is not honorable combat. You used deception, manipulation. We used intelligence, Vivian corrected. The most human weapon of all. She turned to face him fully, her silk gown catching the light from exploding ships on the view screen. You see, Warlord, you made a fundamental error. You assumed that because I wore silk instead of armor, I was weak. Because I offered hospitality instead of hostility, I was vulnerable. In Krelian culture, Zefak began. In Krelian culture, might makes right, Vivian interrupted. Strength is everything, subtlety is weakness. But you're not fighting Krelians now. You're fighting humans, and we've spent millennia perfecting the art of turning strength against itself. The bridge shuddered slightly as the Nightfall fired its main batteries, adding its firepower to the coordinated assault. On screen, the Krelian flagship Devastator was taking severe damage, its shields failing under concentrated human fire. My ship! Zefak roared, watching his command vessel list to port, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. Will be recovered, repaired, and studied, Vivian said, matter-of-factly. Along with all your advanced technology, consider it payment for the 47 worlds you've conquered. You cannot defeat the entire hegemony, can't we? Vivian's smile was sharp as starlight. By now, similar dinner parties are concluding throughout Krelian space. Your sector commanders are proving quite chatty, once properly motivated. We humans are very good at making friends, Zefak, even with our enemies. The warlord's expression shifted from rage to something approaching respect. You planned this entire war around dinner parties? Among other things, Vivian acknowledged, though I prefer to think of it as aggressive diplomacy. She gestured to the view screen, where the last Krelian ships were either surrendering or fleeing into hyperspace. Effective, wouldn't you agree? Captain, reported Communications Officer Martinez. Admiral Hawthorne signals the engagement is concluded. Enemy fleet neutralized with minimal casualties on our side. Excellent! Vivienne rose from her chair, smoothing her silk skirts. Have medical teams prepare to receive survivors and begin recovery operations on disabled vessels. She turned, back to Zefak, who watched the aftermath with stunned disbelief. You see, Warlord, you were right about one thing. This was indeed about strength versus weakness. You just misidentified which was which. Victory in Silk 3. Hours after the last Krelian ship had either surrendered or fled, Captain Vivian Blackthorn stood in the Nightfall's observation lounge, her emerald silk gown now bearing small signs of the evening's events. A wine stain. Here, a slight tear there, like battle scars worn with pride. Before her, the stars seemed brighter somehow, no longer shadowed by the threat of an enemy armada. Warlord Zefak sat in reinforced restraints nearby, his bone armor dulled and his 4 eyes fixed on the debris field that had once been his mighty fleet. Admiral Harrison Voss, commander of the Human Task Force, had arrived aboard the Nightfall for the formal surrender ceremony, his decorated uniform a stark contrast to Vivian's elegant gown. Quite the unconventional victory, Captain, Admiral Voss commented, reviewing the battle reports on his datapad. Intelligence estimates we captured or destroyed 70% of the Krelian invasion force, with casualties on our side numbering less than 50. The best victories are won before the first shot is fired, Vivienne replied, accepting a glass of champagne from her aide. Though I must credit Warlord Zefak for his enthusiastic cooperation during the intelligence gathering. Zefak's mandibles clicked bitterly. You humans fight without honor. Deception, manipulation, trickery, these are not the weapons of warriors. No, Vivienne agreed, turning to face him directly. They're the weapons of survivors, of a species that learned long ago that raw strength isn't always enough. She gestured toward the stars beyond the viewport. How many civilizations have you conquered through pure military might, Zefak? 47 systems, 300 worlds, the warlord replied automatically, then caught himself. And how many of those civilizations are truly gone? Vivienne pressed. How many cultures, languages, art forms, scientific achievements were lost because you believed strength was the only currency that mattered? For the first time since his capture, Zefak seemed genuinely thoughtful. Victory is victory. The strong survive. But do they thrive? Vivienne sat across from him, her silk rustling softly. The Krelian hegemony spans 1,000 worlds, yet what have you created? What legacy beyond conquest and destruction? We bring order to chaos, Zefak insisted, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. You bring conformity, Vivienne corrected. Silence where there should be symphony. But humans, we learned something different. We learned that diversity makes us stronger, that different perspectives create solutions no single mind could imagine. Admiral Voss nodded approvingly. Which is why tonight's victory belonged not to our weapons, but to our understanding. We knew your culture, your psychology, your weaknesses, because we took the time to study them. The Ethereal Collective tried to resist us with their advanced technology, Zefak said slowly. The Valdorians relied on their defensive networks. All fell before Krelian might. Because they fought you on your terms, Vivienne explained. They tried to match strength with strength, armor with armor. But we wore silk to your war zone. We brought hospitality to your hostility. We turned your greatest strength, your pride, into your greatest vulnerability. The observation lounge's doors slid open, and Captain Felix Reeves entered, his expression grim but satisfied. Captain Blackthorn, the final casualty reports are in. We lost the destroyer Courage and the frigate Intrepid 43 souls. Total. Krelian losses are estimated at over 15,000. Vivienne's expression sobered. Every life lost diminishes us all. Have the families been notified? Admiral Chen is handling notifications personally, Reeves confirmed. Memorial services will be held on Titan Station once the immediate crisis has passed. Zefak watched this exchange with growing confusion. You mourn enemy dead? We mourn. All unnecessary death, Vivian replied simply. That's another thing that makes us human, Warlord. We can celebrate victory while still grieving its cost. She stood, moving to the viewport where the human fleet was assisting in rescue operations, pulling Krelian survivors from disabled ships. Your people will be treated according to the Geneva Conventions, fed, housed, given medical care. Many will eventually be repatriated to Krelian space. Why? Zefak asked, genuine bewilderment in his voice. We are your enemies. We're our enemies, Vivian corrected. Now you're our prisoners, which makes you our responsibility. And perhaps eventually, you might become something else entirely. Admiral Voss checked his chronometer. The diplomatic corps is requesting a formal meeting with any Krelian commanders willing to discuss terms. Apparently, tonight's victory has had ripple effects throughout their territory. Other sector commanders are surrendering? Zefak's eyes widened. Requesting negotiations, Vivian clarified. It seems word of your dining experience has spread. Many of your colleagues are suddenly very interested in human aggressive diplomacy. The warlord slumped in his restraints, the full weight of his defeat settling upon him. I have brought shame upon the hegemony. You've brought them an opportunity, Vivian said gently. The chance to choose a different path, to build rather than simply conquer. She smoothed her silk gown one final time, the fabric still catching the light despite its battle wear. After all, Warlord, even the mightiest warrior can learn to appreciate the strength that comes wrapped in silk. As if to emphasize her point, she moved toward the exit with fluid grace, her evening gown trailing behind her like a victory banner, a reminder that sometimes the most devastating weapons come in the most unexpected packages, and that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to.